Part 10. Total ship collapse, reject rocks at the start. Author, Return Captain. Chapter 91. The spatial fluctuations in the water city have all dissipated, but everyone's eyes have not taken their eyes off. Looking at the figure suspended in mid-air. What's that? Karp looked at Kiana, and the memories in his mind were turned over. The original Kiana bounty was set at 10 million Bailey because she was not seen when she was fighting the Arthur pirates. And in the Valley of the Gods, Kiana is not active on the battlefield, so the bounty is set very low. And yet now, seeing Kiana at this time, although there was not the slightest fluctuation emanating from the surroundings, it made him feel very dangerous. The same is true for Roger next to him. Those golden eyes looked at them like a swarm of ants. After a while, Kiana in the sky finally moved. The suspended body seemed to be adapting to the power in the body, and slowly raised its right hand. The spear of Yakan behind him moved, and the side of it was hovering, like the most sincere guard, waiting for the queen's order. With a flick of his finger, the spear of Akong shot out like an arrow from a string, towards Karp. In an instant, they crossed the distance between the two sides, leaving an afterimage in the sky, and they were already in front of Karp. In the face of such a swift attack, Karp did not dare to resist, and dodged to the side at the last moment. Burst. The spear of Akong shot into the ground, without causing a loud sound, and shuttled through the ground like a loach, rushing out in an instant, rushing towards Karp again. And Roger, on the other side, Kiana did not let him be idle. Once again, he commanded a spear of Akong and charged away. In the face of the oncoming attack, Roger's short knife was surrounded by armed colors, and it collided with it directly. Boom! Immediately, Roger felt a huge amount of power enter him through the short knife. This power carried a sharp aura, which made his face change slightly. The two sides were at a stalemate for a while, and the spear of Yakan was the first to leave, circling in mid-air, and attacking from the side again. The sudden loss of strength made Roger's right hand tremble slightly, but it had recovered in an instant. I didn't expect that little Yakan spear to burst out with such tremendous power. Seeing the attack coming again, Roger's face was solemn, and he blocked it step by step. I no longer dare to fight with all my strength as I did at the beginning. Kiana's hand flicked slightly, and the attack of the spear of Akona became sharper and sharper. Mei Yi, who was standing not far away, watched all this, and couldn't help but show a look of amazement in her eyes. The attack of the spear of the Archon alone can exhaust a vice admiral and a famous pirate on the sea. Kiana has also become very powerful now. Captain. In the distance, Rita and Arthur approached. Kiana should be familiar with her powers by now. Arthur smiled and looked at Roger and Karp below. Let them be guinea pigs. Kiana's attacks continued, and the sharper attacks made Roger and Karp fight back more and more fiercely. Roger, it's not a way for us to defend passively like this, we have to get close to the main body. Karp yelled. Although they can resist for the time being, it will be a long time. Physical exertion puts them in increasingly dangerous situations. What are you going to do? Roger also knew that they were in danger now. It's very simple, let your people help me resist for the time being. As he spoke, Karp rushed towards Riley. I'll leave this to you, help me fend it off for a while. Seeing the spear of Akong rushing straight towards him, Riley had a sentence in his heart that he didn't know whether to talk about it or not. He had to do it now. Taking advantage of the short time that was won over, Karp jumped up and chased in the direction of Kiana. Month step. One of the 6 styles is to step on the air with strong foot force to produce a strong air retention force, and you can walk in the air like stepping on stairs, but you can't stay in the air for too long. Cap stepped on the air and rushed towards Kiana, believing that as long as the distance was close, there would be a way. But roar! Behind Kiana, a dragon-like creature soars into the sky. Benares, the lawgiver of the void's judgment-level companion Honkaimon. Benares has the same abilities as Kuligara, with the same appearance but slightly different colors, one with consciousness and the other with non-consciousness, I 1/4 per thousand. What is this? The sight of the dragon-like creature rushing towards him, its sharp claws and sharp teeth let him know that it would never be pleasant to be touched. Can only change direction to dodge. Oh, what a bonus. Seeing Benares, a smile tugged at Arthur's lips. No matter how fast Carp's dodge speed in mid-air, how could he be Benares's opponent? He only struggled for a while before he was hit headlong. It fell from the sky like a meteor and smashed into the ground. Boom! A huge pit was smashed out. In the dusty pit, Carp crawled out, looking a little embarrassed. Looking up, he was relieved to see that Benares was not chasing after him. Benares circled in the sky and flew slowly towards Kiana. As he approached, his whole body shimmered and he took on a human form. He has long gray hair, sky blue pupils, and a feather-like ornament on his head like Selene. He wears a small white coat resembling a small waistcoat, decorated with a purple four-pointed star on his chest, and has a long hem that hangs down to the knees. He wears long black gloves with white armor and purple fingers. He wears black hot pants and white stockings with purple heels. Her Majesty stopped in front of Kiana and knelt on one knee in submission. Bella, long time no see. A faint voice came from Kiana's mouth, and she reached out her right hand and touched Benares's head. Leave it to me. Walking slowly in mid-air is like stepping on an invisible staircase. How is that possible? Carp's eyes were about to pop out when he saw this. Compared to the moon step, Kiana is like a leisurely stroll. Step by step, the energy around the body surged, and the skirt fluttered everywhere behind him. Black holes emerge behind Kiana. The aura of destruction instantly enveloped the side of the world. Oh no, run! Roger and Carp were startled, and immediately beckoned to their own people, turning around to run away. However, black holes have covered the sky, enveloping them all. Countless amounts of energy poured out of the black hole and swept down below. AHH. For Roger and Carp, Arthur can only pray silently for them in his heart. Total ship collapse, reject rocks at the start. Author, Return Captain. Chapter 92. On the calm sea, a warship full of holes moved forward. Ugh. A sigh came from the deck, and the surrounding navy looked a little sluggish when they heard the voice. Carp sat on a stool, his hair disheveled, his clothes in tatters, like a beggar. I can't help but recall the scene that happened before. Energetic attacks poured down from the sky, each one containing great power. Under the attack of this intensity, they could not hold out for long, let alone those ordinary navies. For this reason, Carp made the decision at the first time to let all the navies retreat immediately, and he came to break the rear. The armed color was attached to his body, and he stubbornly resisted more than a dozen energy attacks, and finally bought some time to let the navy withdraw to the warship. But it also caused Carp to suffer internal injuries, although it didn't look like anything from the outside. Thankfully, the terrifying woman didn't catch up. Drifting away from the water capital, Carp breathed a sigh of relief. Why is everyone in the Arthur Pirates so terrifying? Carp frowned tightly and slowly lay down in his chair. Why are these powerful people willing to be pirates? Isn't the welfare of their navy good enough? Carp is destined to have no answer to such a question. The warship is moving forward at a very fast speed, and the matter must be reported to the Navy headquarters as soon as possible. Carp knew that the sea would be stormy again because of the addition of the Arthur Pirates. And on the other side of the water city, in a hotel room. It's really ruthless, hiss, tap, tap, I don't have the strength of yours. Because Riley treated his wounds, Spark's face jumped. Don't worry, you can't die. After treating the wound, Riley also slapped it, distorting Spark's painful face. You're going to murder me. Spark yelled, and Riley just smiled. It's really strong, not just strength but also ability. Roger stood to the side, his right arm bandaged and his face serious. If it's a one-on-one situation, I'm afraid he doesn't have much confidence either. It's still so strong, Arthur Pirates. Roger sighed in his heart, he didn't know how to describe the Arthur Pirates. In short, not being an enemy is the best outcome. I heard that the Arthur Pirates have left the Water City. Has this matter been confirmed? It's been determined. Riley nodded, having seen the Hublians in which Arthur and his party were riding. That's good. Roger nodded. It will take some time for Master Tom to finish the ship, and we can recuperate in the meantime. During this time, I'm afraid that neither Roger nor Carp will be in a good mood. Facing the deep pressure of the pirates who are far stronger than them, their companions must also become stronger. At the moment, just 3 people are completely inadequate. And the object of their fear, Arthur, at this moment, was carefully looking at Kiana, who was sitting opposite. Hugh Bryan drove slowly on the sea, but the atmosphere in the living room was somewhat solemn. Kiana has shed her lawgiver armor and changed into a black t-shirt and beige skirt, which looks even more cute. If her golden eyes had turned blue, perhaps Arthur would have taken pity on her. Kiana leaned on the couch with her legs crossed and her hands on her chest, and Benares stood by like a loyal guard. Without saying a word, Arthur didn't even know what to say. Looking at Rita and May next to her, she looked at her for help, but the answer she got was, "Captain, Rita has gone to prepare lunch, is May going to help?" May gave Arthur a helpless look and followed Rita into the kitchen. Suddenly, the living room fell into an extremely embarrassing situation. Being stared at by those golden eyes, Arthur felt that he had a weak heart, and he didn't seem to have done anything bad. Wouldn't you become the lawgiver of emptiness? Isn't it the awakening of the second personality? My manly husband, what is there to be afraid of? While thinking, Arthur also crossed Erlang's legs. Kiana, don't be cold, as if someone owes you money, although it is a lawyer's personality, you still have to smile more. To explain a little here, when you become the lawgiver of emptiness, you will have the consciousness of the lawyer, and the rest of the time it will be the consciousness of Kiana's own body, which is the so-called one body with 2 thoughts. Humph, do you think I'll forgive you for doing such an excessive thing to me while I'm asleep? A glint flashed in Kiana's golden eyes. Oh, you know that. Arthur's eyes lit up as he looked Kiana up and down. The style is completely different, quite like a royal sister, but it gives people a different feeling. You. As Arthur watched, Kiana felt as if a pair of hands were really caressing her. Suddenly, a flash of annoyance flashed in his eyes, and with a wave of his right hand, the spear of Akong appeared, shooting out towards Arthur. Arthur smiled at Kiana's attack. A small black hole appeared next to it, and the spear of Yakang entered it, but it was nowhere to be seen. Don't waste your efforts, Kiana, your attacks won't do anything to me. When Kiana was successfully promoted to the Law of the Void, Arthur also gained the ability to correspond to it. Take control of your space. Within a radius, he was the absolute master of this space, and even Kiana's ability was weaker than that. Humph, Bella, kill him with me. I know that I can't call a helper. This. Looking at Kiana, who was huffing, Benares stood still and didn't know what to do. Don't embarrass Bella anymore. Syllable. A crisp snap of her fingers sounded, and Bella and Kiana froze in place. Space freezes. You just said that you did something excessive while you were sleeping, so I guess that feeling must be very clear. Arthur came up to Kiana, rubbing his fingers against her chin. Looking at those angry eyes, Arthur laughed. So to give you a deeper impression. For disobedient children, it is still necessary to train them well. Arthur lifted his hands and picked Kiana up. What are you going to do? Let me go. However, such words are not lethal at all. You'll know what to do in a moment, but don't fall asleep so quickly, or it won't be fun. Leaned into Kiana's ear and whispered, then looked up and shouted. Rita, we're not going to eat lunch. Good Captain, have fun. Rita's voice came from the dining room, and Arthur carried Kiana to the door, glancing at Bern Arus, who was still frozen behind him. With a hook of his fingers, his body slowly levitated and floated towards him. The door closed, and in a few moments Kiana's angry voice could be heard inside. I won't forgive you if you dare to do that. Xiao if you dare to threaten me, you will definitely sing Conquest today. Queen, Bella is sorry. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Total ship collapse, reject rocks at the start. Author, Return Captain. Chapter 93. Headquarters of the Navy. When Sengoku knew that Carp was back, he personally went to greet him. At this time, Sengoku was already a naval admiral, and if he didn't encounter anything special, he would be guarding the naval headquarters. Standing in the harbor, you can see a warship swaying towards the side in the distance. Is the battle against the Roger pirates so fierce? The Navy has always had the upper hand in the battle against pirates for two reasons. The first is because the Navy has a steady stream of regenerative forces that can be crushed by numbers. If one warship can't beat it, you can send 2 and send 10. The second is the warship itself. The craftsmanship of the warship is unmatched by the pirate sailboats, and a reinforced version of the warship can be equipped with 6 cannons. And these cannons are also more powerful than ordinary cannons. Its stiff hull and powerful firepower allow the Navy to be invincible on the seas. Around the former locks pirates made waves on the sea, they did not dare to confront the large number of warships of the Navy head-on. These 2 points established the position of the Navy. It stands to reason that to be able to turn a warship into this appearance must have experienced a lot of firepower. But can the Roger pirates have such firepower? The bewildered Sengoku finally waited for the warship to stop in front of him. Later, he saw the wounded Navy coming down from the warship, and hurriedly organized the surrounding Navy to send them to the infirmary. Carp was the last to get off the warship, and his embarrassed appearance made Sengoku a little embarrassed. Ha ha ha, what's wrong Carp, it's like this. Sengoku laughed and walked up to Carp, reached out and patted him on the back vigorously. Ahem poof. What Sengoku didn't expect was that Carp coughed twice, and a mouthful of blood spurted out. This made Sengoku's face change. Carp, you're hurt, I'll take you to the medical room. Saying that, Sengoku was going to help Carp to the medical room. But Carp shook his head. I have something very important to go to the marshal. No matter how important things are, heal your injuries first. Sengoku is in a hurry, how can he let Carp leave now? At least he has to check it, there is no major problem. Very important thing, Sengoku. Carp slapped his right hand on Sengoku's shoulder and squeezed it hard. Okay, I'll help you over. Seeing Carp's determined eyes, Sengoku nodded and helped Carp to walk towards the naval headquarters. In the admiral's office, hearing Carp's description, Steelbone nodded solemnly. It's really the Arthur pirates, it's a bit of a problem now. Cyborg said with a sigh. Actually, Marshal Kong, have you ever heard about this before? Carp asked, confused. Yes, just 2 days ago. Immediately, the Steel Bone said about the pheasant. It's just that Major General Kuzan is still in a coma now, and he hasn't received accurate information, so he hasn't said anything about it. Cyborg glanced apologetically at Carp. If he had been notified earlier, Carp might have been a little more prepared and would not have been so seriously injured. It's okay Marshal, the situation was so sudden that even if you knew it in advance, it wouldn't be of much use. Carp shook his head, remembering the scene at that time, which made him not only pinch a cold sweat. If you say anything about Major General Kuzan, you're awake by now. A voice came through the door, and the yellow ape walked in. I've seen Marshal Kong, General Sengoku, Lieutenant General Karp. The yellow ape nodded at everyone. Major General Polusalino, do you mean Major General Kuzan has woken up? After hearing this, the sorrow on his face finally dissipated somewhat. Pheasant's talent and abilities are among the best in their navy, and Cyborg has given them considerable expectations. Let's go, and have a look, just in time for Lieutenant General Karp to do a physical examination. The group immediately walked towards the medical room. Sengoku forcibly takes Karp for a physical examination, and Cyborg arrives at Pheasant's bedside. Marshal of the Sky. Okay, don't be so polite, how are you feeling now? Steel Gakong said and glanced up and down at the Pheasant, nodded slightly, and already had a rough idea in his heart. The Marshal can rest assured that his health is no longer in serious trouble. The Pheasant was originally a person with the ability to freeze the fruit, and it was able to freeze him, just because the ice was relatively hard and surrounded by domineering inside. That level of domineering is something that the Pheasant can't forcibly break, so he can only wait. When the domineering dissipates to a certain extent, he can forcibly break free. It's okay. Cyborg nodded. At this moment, Zifa also rushed in from the outside. Teacher, I'm sorry to worry you. Seeing Zifa, the Pheasant said with some self-reproach. It's good that you're okay, what kind of opponent did you meet this time? Speaking of this, the Pheasant's face gradually became serious. Marshal, teacher, I met the Arthur pirates. Although they had already guessed the answer in their hearts, when they heard it again from the Pheasant's mouth, everyone's faces couldn't help but be a little solemn. Later, after the diagnosis was confirmed, everyone walked out of the medical room and Sengoku and Karp were still arguing at the end. They all said that I was fine, and I had to go for a physical examination. As if nothing was wrong, I should follow the doctor's instructions and recuperate for 2 days with peace of mind. For Karp's bold temper, Sengoku is also helpless. Isn't it just a little internal bleeding? I'll be fine in 2 days. Karp resolutely resists such a thing as lying in a hospital bed. Some of them returned to the office of Cyborg. Marshal, now that the Arthur pirates have reappeared, shouldn't our navy be prepared? As a naval admiral, Sengoku now prioritizes the interests of the navy. According to his idea, just like encircling and suppressing the Rocks pirates, hundreds of warships completely wiped out the Arthur pirates. It's necessary to be prepared, but you can't do it on a large scale. Sengoku's idea was understood as soon as he heard it, and this was a veto in disguise. But if you don't take advantage of the fact that you destroy it now, I'm afraid that the power of the Arthur pirates will grow stronger and stronger in the future. Sengoku was still a little unwilling. Of course I know this kind of thing, but now that the sea is in turmoil, the rest of the Rocks pirates are the only ones who have been caught a few times and escaped in the end. Their power is getting bigger and bigger, and they are about to occupy almost the whole of the New World, and if there is a war for them, it will be a great war. Steel Balo shook his head as he said this. The main thing is that we don't have the support of the world government. This is the most important point. Because Lox had the ambition to dominate the world government gave the navy the greatest support. But the others only make trouble on their own acres and thirds of land, and no matter how jubilant they are, they have no effect on the rule of the world government. So the world government simply ignored this. If there is a real war, everything will be borne by their navy itself. This kind of truth, as long as you mention it a little, everyone will understand. It's Marshal Kong, it's me who is reckless. Sengoku nodded, retreated, and said no more. As for the Arthur pirates, we are still maintaining a wait-and-see attitude. As long as they don't do too much, we won't take the lead in initiating incidents. This phrase also represents the attitude of the navy towards the Arthur pirates. Total ship collapse, reject rocks at the start. Author, return captain. Chapter 94. In the early morning, the warm sun shines down from the sky. Hyperion sailed on the calm sea. In one of the bedrooms, Arthur opened his eyes and glanced down at Kiana, who was holding his arm. Kiana, who is asleep, is like a kitten, always trying to grab something. As if in some sweet dream, from time to time some cute sounds come out of my mouth. Such a cute appearance made Arthur can't help but touch it with his hand. Captain, don't make a fuss. A little abnormal movement made Kiana a little sober, grabbed the hand that was the stranger and put it into her arms, arched her little head to find a comfortable position, and continued to sleep. It seems that the lawyer's consciousness has fallen into a deep sleep. Hearing Kiana's familiar voice, Arthur breathed a sigh of relief. In the past 3 days, Kiana the lawgiver has shown enough stubbornness. All it takes is a little strength to regain a little strength and launch an attack on Arthur. But no matter what kind of attack it is useless for Arthur now. The trick of spatial solidification alone is not something that Kiana can resist. However, after using it twice, Kiana, who was already the lawgiver of emptiness, also discovered the weakness of spatial solidification. When there is some change in the surrounding space, he immediately hides in the imaginary space. The imaginary space does not exist in reality, but refers to another space. Spatial solidification can only solidify the current space, and naturally cannot have any effect on another space. But that was just a matter for Arthur. Kiana can enter the imaginary space, and Arthur can naturally do it too. Just a little more time to waste. But because of this, after catching Kiana, the price she paid was much more miserable. The space is frozen and is posed in a variety of poses. After 3 days of continuous trouble, I couldn't run away from fighting, but I suffered even deeper humiliation. The lawyer's consciousness finally fell into a deep sleep. Otherwise, there wouldn't have been such a peaceful morning. Both hands were grasped, which made Arthur feel uncomfortable, and he wanted to pull out his left hand, but he didn't expect Kiana to grasp it quite tightly. Captain, can you stop moving? A low, disgruntled murmur came out of Kiana's mouth, letting go of her hands, and instead wrapping her arms around Arthur's neck even further. Well, it looks like the brain has woken up, and it just doesn't want to open its eyes. It's already up and running. Looking at the face that was close at hand, Arthur could only use a trick. Reached out and pinched Kiana's nose. Kiana, who was short of breath, was blocked by Arthur when she was about to open her mouth. You're so annoying, Captain, you can't sleep until you wake up naturally. Breaking free from Arthur's shackles, Kiana finally opened her eyes with a warm and angry face. Looking at these big blue eyes, Arthur smiled and stood up first. Get up quickly, I'm afraid Mei will come to call us in a while. Say CAO, CAO will arrive. The door opened, and Mei was the first to poke out a small head, and was relieved to find that Kiana's pupils were blue. It's so golden that I can't be idle all day. Captain, Kiana, Rita has prepared breakfast. Well, we'll go down right away. After washing up, he walked down the stairs with Kiana. Wow, it smells so good. Seeing the food, Kiana instantly rushed out. It's really quiet today, and I'm not used to it. Rita said and winked at Arthur, smiling all over her face. Alas, Rita, don't talk about it, it's been enough for me to toss in the past 2 days. Arthur sighed as he spoke, picked up a crystal bag, and took a bite. The rich fragrance spreads in the mouth and stimulates the buds. It's really a delicacy in the world. But to Rita, the captain seemed to be enjoying himself. Rita said and looked at Kiana with a funny look. Kiana was a little embarrassed to look at her. All right, don't say any more, hurry up and eat. A quick breakfast passed in teasing. Ah, it's so full, it's so full. After eating, Kiana sat on the sofa, touching her stomach without scruples, with a satisfied look. "Captain, do you need some fruit?" Mei Yi walked over with a fruit platter. "Put it on the table first, and eat it later. Come, let me take a good look at you," Arthur said as he held out his hand. "I've been messing with Kiana for the past 2 days, and I don't care a little about Mei Yi and Rita, so I have to make up for it." Placing the fruit platter on the table, Mei took Arthur's hand and sat down next to her. "Well, it's still so pretty." Holding Mei Yi's cheek for a moment, Arthur nodded thoughtfully. Hearing Arthur's words, Mei Yi was still very excited in her heart, and glanced at Kiana next to her a little shyly. "All right, I'm not going to make a shiny light bulb." Kiana turned her head to the side. After a while with Mei Yi and Rita, most of the morning time passed. Open the system interface, read the information of each character once, and click on the lottery. 10 shots in a row. Sure enough, it still didn't hit the soul. It's still some character shards and Titan mechs. Over the years, Arthur has accumulated hundreds of Titan mechs, all of which can form a small army. With the firepower of the Titan mecha, as long as you don't encounter someone with a particularly powerful ability, you can destroy a country. I'm really looking forward to the next Valkyrie. Who will it be? Faces flashed through his mind, and no matter who it was, Arthur felt that he would not have any regrets. Because each of them is so beautiful and powerful. Time passed slowly, dusk fell, and Arthur and his party prepared the tools for the barbecue on the deck. Just then, a sailboat in the distance passed them. On the deck of the sailboat, there was only one figure standing. However, when Arthur saw it, his eyes lit up. Total ship collapse, reject rocks at the start. Author, Return Captain. Chapter 95. The sunset was reflected in the twilight sea, and Hyperion moved forward slowly. On the deck, Rita and the others were preparing the barbecue tools, while Arthur was looking at the various ingredients in the store. Since it's a barbecue, it's important to choose the best meats. Only now did I realize that I couldn't even afford to eat. Arthur sighed. He could only choose some of the ordinary types, and the spirit meat next to him, the cheapest one, was not something that Arthur could afford now. Feeling his poverty, he bought some mutton, beef, pork, and vegetables. At this moment, a sailboat passed by. If it was an ordinary sailboat, Arthur didn't care. However, above the sailboat, only a figure stood, dressed in black, with a large sword behind his back. The most striking thing is his eagle-like eyes. I am afraid that only one person above the sea has such eyes. Joracol Mihawk. The great sword of the future. Although he still looks like a teenager at this time, the sharp aura exuded by his body is still impossible to ignore. Is this the fate of God? A smile tugged at the corners of Arthur's lips as he turned to Rita and the others. You prepare first, and I'll come when I go. After saying that, Arthur directly cast a spatial freeze to freeze the entire area. Then he stepped on the void and landed in front of Mihawk, and at the same time unraveled the spatial solidification. To others, it was as if Arthur had suddenly appeared in front of them. Mihawk stood on the deck, staring ahead, unconcerned about anything beside him. Suddenly, however, a figure appeared in front of him without warning. If it were anyone else, they would have been taken aback, but Mihawk was different. A sharp light flashed in his eagle-like eyes, and he instantly drew the great sword behind his back and slashed straight towards Arthur. Boom! The whole sailboat sank a little, and the power spread outward. The commotion caught the attention of Rita and the others in Hyperion. It's really strange that the captain of the ship, how can he take the initiative to make trouble for others? Kiana tilted her head a little incomprehensible. Isn't it usually a nuisance to be troublesome? The captain should have his own ideas. May nodded affirmatively. No matter what Arthur did, she would support her unconditionally. Maybe the captain is tired of looking at us and wants a change of taste. Rita said, with a demonic smile on her lips. No, it won't. Kiana's eyes widened in disbelief. Kiana, you don't really believe it, do you? Mei Yi next to her looked at Kiana speechlessly. They still have a lot of say in whether Arthur's sexual orientation is normal. After all, it's so enthusiastic every time. Just kidding, Kiana, don't take it seriously. Seeing Kiana's serious look, Rita also had to clarify. Whew, I was scared to death, I thought I was going to wear men's clothes in the future. Kiana patted her chest, looking like she was palpitating. The discussion was in full swing on the Hyperion, while the sailing ship on the other side fell into an eerie silence. Mihawk's eyes widened, and he looked ahead in disbelief. Arthur, crouched on the bow of the boat, caught the long knife he swung out with his fingers. How is that possible? Mihawk muttered to himself, unable to believe what he was seeing. Mihawk has been honing his swordsmanship since childhood, and he can maintain extreme composure against any opponent along the way. Now, however, it wasn't just the eagle's eye that didn't see how the person in front of him came to him. Even his own attack was blocked so lightly. Seeing Mihawk with a look of surprise on his face, Arthur let go of his fingers. With his current strength and defense, Mihawk's full force blow naturally couldn't have any effect on him. Who are you? Retracting the long knife, Mihawk looked at Arthur with a solemn gaze. The people who challenge you. Arthur said, the cold air on his body surged, and a long knife condensed. Devil fruit ability. Mihawk held his hand on the hilt of the knife, and the battle intent gradually rose in his eyes. Although the man in front of him was the most powerful he had encountered since he went to sea, since he was an opponent, he was fearless. Seeing that Mihawk was almost ready, Arthur jumped off the bow of the ship and stood on the opposite side. Look, look, the captain is going to fight. Seeing that there was a good show on the side, Kiana immediately stood up and ran to the side of the boat. It seems that the captain is quite interested in this man. Rita rubbed her chin thoughtfully, not knowing what was going on in her little head. Mei Yi stood aside, her eyes fixed on Arthur, and did not speak. On the deck of the sailing ship, in the face of such a strong opponent, Mihawk did not dare to be careless and took the lead in attacking. Instantly drew the long knife, and the sword flashed, slashing straight down. Without any fancy moves, sheer power and speed and keen insight are the capital of his Mihawk. Boom! The impact of the force caused the sailboat to sink instantly, and the calm sea suddenly surged outward. The strength is good. The long knife condensed with ice blocked Mihawk's blow. It's not over yet. The first blow was blocked, which was already expected by Mihawk. Raise the long knife and slash again, faster and more powerful than the previous one. Bang bang bang. A storm of attacks rained down on Arthur. What's going on with the captain? Why just resist? Seeing that Arthur was just passively defensive, Kiana on the side was anxious and wanted to rush up immediately to beat Mihawk. Don't worry, let's just watch. Mei comforted Kiana. On the sailboat, Mihawk's attacks became more and more rapid, and his strength and speed exceeded his limits again and again. Such a discovery made Arthur happy to play with him for a while. Finally, all the attacks dissipated, and Mihawk fell to his knees with a broadsword, panting. He didn't have the strength to swing another knife now. The difference in strength is really felt. It's so powerful that there's no end to the chase. Don't you have the strength anymore? Arthur beckoned, and Hyperion flew over on the barbecue, and instantly took out a glass of wine and poured it. This taste is. Even though he was exhausted and smelled the familiar aroma of wine, Mihawk struggled to look over. Oh? You know this wine? Arthur raised his eyebrows and looked at Mihawk with some surprise. I had the pleasure of having a drink, and the taste is still unforgettable. Mihawk sat cross-legged on the deck, picked up the glass in front of him and took a deep breath. That's what it tastes like. Seeing Mihawk's intoxicated expression, Arthur also smiled. It seems that Doflamingo and they are doing well. If you like it, I'll give it to you. Arthur said, placing the full jar in front of Mihawk. Give me all this altar. Mihawk looked at Arthur in shock. Mihawk was well aware of the value of this wine, and although it was only a jar the size of a head, it was more precious than the equivalent of gold. That's right. Arthur nodded. Looking at the jar of wine placed in front of him, Mihawk knew that it was a little bad to accept such a valuable gift. But it's still hard to resist the temptation that emanates. Okay, I'll buy yours. Mihawk finally relented and nodded. Then the two chatted a little, and they became familiar with each other a lot. This is for you, I hope we will have a chance to meet again in the future. Arthur said as he pulled out a communicator and placed it in front of Mihawk. Next time you come to me, this kind of wine pipe is enough. Arthur got up and returned to Hyperion. My name is Joricole Mihawk. Mihawk stood up and shouted at Arthur. Arthur! Arthur waved his hand, and a faint voice came out. The distance between the two ships gradually separated, but it is conceivable that before long, they will meet again. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Total ship collapse, reject rocks at the start. Author, Return Captain. Chapter 96. As night fell, Hugh Bryan drove slowly on the sea. Not even a single Sea King was seen. There's no bothering from the Sea Kings, it's all the credit of AI-chan. Hyperion will continuously release a sonar that will drive away schools of fish in the vicinity. And in Arthur's bedroom. Arthur, who had already finished washing, had just opened the bathroom door and walked out, when suddenly a sharp attack seemed like he was coming at him. A smile tugged at the corners of Arthur's lips as he took a step forward, dodging the attack while holding the man in his arms. At the same time, the dark room suddenly brightened. Rita, what are you doing again? Looking at the closed face, Arthur asked with some puzzlement. I found that the captain has changed his taste recently, and as a maid, I naturally need to cater to it. Rita's body slowly stepped back and spun around. How's that captain, is it good looking? Dressed as a swordsman, with a long knife in butt clothes on his waist, the whole person looks quite heroic. What's the matter, Captain, isn't it pretty? Seeing that Arthur didn't make an evaluation for a long time, Rita's expression was a little sluggish. Sure enough, the captain still prefers real swordsmen. No, Rita, it's just that I'm a little fascinated by it. Arthur shook his head, the smile on his lips became a little thicker, and he ripped off his bathrobe. Do you want to fencing with me? Rita, you'll regret it. At this moment, 3 pairs of eyes widened through the crack in the door. Bella, didn't you go to sleep? Why did you come here to join in the fun? Looking at Bella next to her, Kiana blinked her big eyes. Her Majesty. Bella is here to protect you. Oh. Kiana nodded, then glanced at May above with some dissatisfaction. May ye, they are fighting so fiercely. Let you go, you won't go, and Rita will rob it? Speaking of which, Kiana was a burst of regret, as if it was herself who was robbed. What a shame to role-play or something. Mei Yi said with some embarrassment. It's not a role-play for you, Mei is a real swordsman, and it's not too late to get in. No, it's not good to bother either of them. Mei shook her head in refusal, but how could Kiana be so obedient? With a sinister smile, he pushed Mei into the house. The body can't keep its balance, and it naturally wants to grab something. As a result, Mei Yi grabbed Kiana, and Kiana grabbed Bella next to her. Bang bang bang. Slammed open the door, and the 3 figures fell straight to the carpet. Aha, Captain, I'm sorry, I went to the wrong room. Kiana was pressed by Mei Yi and looked up with an embarrassed expression. The ship, Captain, let's go first. Looking at the two people in front of him who had already put their long swords into the sheath, Mei Yi quickly stood up and turned around to leave. "Since you're already here, don't go." With a wave of Arthur's right hand, the door closed. "Don't blame the queen, it's all Bella's fault." At this time, Bella stepped forward and stood in front of Kiana. "Don't worry, none of you can escape." For a while, there were many swords and shadows in the room, and Arthur fought 4 people alone in a posture of dominating the world. During this period, Kiana's lawyer personality also ran out to join in the fun, looking at the 2 pupils of one blue and one gold. Arthur's attack was even more violent, killing them and throwing them off their armor and begging for mercy. It was destined to be a sleepless night. Arthur's side is on the rise, and in the far distance, in an unknown sea, Doflamingo is also in full swing. More than a dozen sailing ships laid siege to Doflamingo, and the night was brightened by the fighting. "Dover, the other side is coming prepared, and it is about to form an encirclement. What should we do?" Torrible snorted, his gaze swept around, and his face was a little solemn. "If they are on land, they are completely unafraid of facing an enemy several times their size. But now it's above the sea. If a sailboat is hit by artillery fire and plunges into the sea, it will be in a very disadvantageous situation. It must be that old fellow of Pathias who dares to slap me." Doflamingo's face was furious. When he attended Pasuz's banquet, he followed the ship through several countries, which also made the wine in his hand famous. However, the price of a small bottle of 10 million Bailey is not affordable for anyone. Only the true aristocrats were able to spend a lot of money. Along the way, Doflamingo has earned hundreds of millions of Baileys. However, such a huge business opportunity naturally aroused the covetousness of many people. And Pico Pathias is one of them. Although he has a big family and a big business, he can't afford to spend tens of millions of Baileys a day to buy alcohol and drink. So I thought of a solution once and for all. That is to want to work with Doflamingo, to know where this wine comes from. Faced with such a request, Doflamingo naturally would not agree. Pico Pathias's network is many times stronger than his, if Arthur were given a choice between the two. I believe that Pico Pathias will definitely be chosen. Of course, this is just Doflamingo's idea. In any case, Doflamingo would never let anyone interfere with his cooperation with Arthur. This is just a few bottles, and it has earned hundreds of millions of Baileys, and once the market is completely opened, the money is rolling in. I guess I can't count the money I work every day. How could Doflamingo give such an opportunity to someone else? The result is the current situation. I saw more than a dozen sailing ships gradually encircling around me, and there were many forces mixed in with them. Doflamingo memorized them one by one, and when the matter was over, he would settle accounts with them. "Secure the ship, I'll go and kill them." Empty road. After Doflamingo finished speaking, he tied the clouds in the sky with a thread so thin that it was invisible to the naked eye, and his body soared into the air, reaching the opposite side in a few jumps. "Hee, the price to deal with me is something you can't afford." Brush, brush, brush. Thin lines surround it, and the people around it are separated in an instant. With Doflamingo's strength, falling into the crowd is simply a random killing. Even if there are a few devil fruit abilities among them, they are no match for Doflamingo. From this night on, Doflamingo was no longer a petty arms dealer, but a yaksha that everyone feared. And those who deal with him will pay their due. Whether he is a prince or a nobleman or a hegemon. Cecilia's words felt a little heavier than Erlendl. If the reader doesn't mind, I'm fine. Total ship collapse, reject rocks at the start. Author, return captain. Chapter 97. In the early morning, a faint ray of sunlight streams through the windows. The room was filled with the smell of gun smoke. The very regular biological clock made Rita slowly open her eyes, her gaze swept hazily, and then gradually regained consciousness. Sit up from the couch and rub your temples with your fingers to see everything in the room. AHH. Rita shook her head helplessly and stood up, moved her whole body a little, looked at her embarrassed appearance, and walked towards the bathroom. Soon the sound of running water could be heard in the bathroom. Such a sound woke up Mei, who was holding Kiana. Looking at Kiana, who was close at hand, Mei was slightly stunned, and the memory in her mind gradually recovered, not only making her cheeks a little rosy. Why is it slimy? Mei's brows furrowed, and her eyes looked in the direction of the bathroom for the first time. Rita's movements are still so fast, I'll go to my room. He took Kiana's arms around his neck away, glanced at Arthur lying on his back, and pursed his lips. It's still so energetic. AHH. The words that spit out involuntarily were quickly blocked with his hands, and Mei took a blanket and covered Arthur, and then opened the door and walked out. There was no one else on the entire Hyperion, so Mei was also a little unscrupulous. Half an hour later, Rita came out of the bathroom, and the position where everyone outside was lying had changed. Arthur ran to the bed and fell asleep with Kiana in his arms, while Bella had woken up and stood beside him looking a little overwhelmed. Bella opened the window to change the air in the room. Oh, okay. Hearing Rita's words, Bella immediately did so and opened the window. Suddenly, fresh air greeted you. Leave the window open, Bella, and you go wash up too. It's going to be a joke to go out like this. Rita pointed to Bella's cheek and walked out with a smile. Breakfast still has to be prepared. I'm sure everyone is hungry by now. After Rita left, Bella touched her cheek for some reason. A frozen mark streamed down her forehead to the corner of her mouth. Instantly, the scene of Arthur holding a gun to her head and critting it came to mind. It's so damnable. Bella bit her lip, glanced at Arthur, who was holding her queen, and rushed into the bathroom as fast as she could. The shower turned on, feeling the feeling of slowly melting, and Bella breathed a sigh of relief. When Mei finished washing, put on her clothes, and walked out of the room, Bella was already sitting there in the living room. Captain, haven't they gotten up yet? Looking at Rita coming out of the kitchen with her meal, Mei asked. It's been an hour, and it's time to wake up. The captain and Kiana, the two lazy worms, get together, and they won't wake up if no one screams. Rita couldn't be clearer about everyone's personality. Hee, that's right. Mei upstairs smiled, turned, and went back to Arthur's room. This time there is no other special smell in the room, but the mess on the floor still needs to be cleaned up. Captain, get up. Mei reached out her index finger and poked Arthur in the cheek. Are you taking revenge? Arthur's eyes didn't open, and he opened his mouth and said softly. If I wanted to wake up, I would have woken up a long time ago, but I just didn't want to get up. Yes. The captain poked Mei, and Mei poked it back again, and it was smoothed out. Mei's words made Arthur open his eyes, and when he got up, he also dragged Kiana, who was holding him. Oh, Captain, why do you keep disturbing people's dreams? Kiana moved, hugging Arthur's neck to push him back again. But now that I'm awake, I don't go back to sleep. Let's wash up first, and then we'll go down in a moment. Getting up from the bed, he picked up Kiana around his neck and walked to the bathroom. Half an hour later, when Arthur and Kiana walked out of the living room, everyone else was seated. Your Majesty, please be seated. Seeing Kiana coming, Bella immediately pulled out the stool, and even Arthur on the side didn't care. All right, Bella, you don't have to go through the trouble, sit down. Yes, Queen. Bella nodded and took her seat, and everyone tacitly didn't say anything about last night. After all, it's all so embarrassing. Breakfast was served in a pleasant atmosphere. While Rita was cleaning up the dishes, Mei, Kiana, and Bella went to clean up the traces left by the war. Arthur sat on the couch and opened the system interface. Calculate the time, and the friendship points are enough. Open the lottery interface, and sure enough, it's just right. By now, Arthur has been unfazed by the lottery, but surprises often appear at such times. 10 rays of light emerged in front of Arthur one by one. Character card, Brynjazija. EK. Character fragments, 45. On this Hyperion, the fourth Valkyrie finally arrived. Brynjazija. EK. Opening the Valkyrie warehouse, a new Valkyrie is unlocked after Rita, Mei, and Kiana. Open Brynja's personal interface. 45/30ths, upgradable. Click on promotion, and immediately went from a B rank Valkyrie to an A rank Valkyrie. Meanwhile, Arthur checks the armor that Brynja has unlocked. Valkyrie Chariot, Driver Outfit, Mountain Blow, Snow Sniper, Silver Wolf's Dawn. A total of 4 armor pairs can be used. Now that Arthur has enough combat power, the need for combat power is no longer urgent, and these 4 armor pairs can give Brynja the power to protect herself. After checking your attributes, click the play button. Countless rays of light condensed in front of Arthur, slowly outlining a figure. The light condensed, and a figure emerged from within. Dressed in a slightly military-style outfit, his face is calm, and there is not much emotion to show out. The light gray curls are combed into double ponytail spiral curls with paired bows that match the outfit. The closed eyes slowly open, revealing light gray pupils. The Valkyrie Brynjazija. EK is willing to work for the captain and give everything for the captain. Seeing Arthur in front of her, Brynja knelt on one leg to show her loyalty. Total ship collapse, reject rocks at the start. Author, Return Captain. Chapter 98. Inside the bridge of the Hyperion, inside and outside the screen at this time, 2 pairs of eyes stared at each other. Rita, how long have they been like this? Arthur looked at Brynja standing in front of the screen and AI on the screen, rubbing his chin with his fingers. Captain, it's been about half an hour. Rita next to her replied. Come on. Kiana on the side was full of energy, and she was a little eager to try. Kiana, who are you cheering for? May asked suspiciously. Naturally, it's going to be a cheer for both of them. Kiana said as a matter of course, and such an answer made Mei pat her forehead, speechless. It is estimated that a new round of challenges will start again. As soon as Rita finished speaking, the 2 people who were glaring at each other immediately began to move. You were 100 years ahead of me when you wanted to hack into my system? Maybe to make it more vivid, AI also blurs the appearance of sitting in front of the computer on the screen. His eyes were fixed on the screen, and his hands were tapping on the keyboard as quickly as flying, and he could only see countless after images. And Brynja on the outside is not far behind. Countless codes flash quickly on the big screen in front of you, making it dizzying. For the control of the Hyperion system, Brynja will definitely take it back. Brynja had a serious face, as if she was doing something very important. Yes, that's a very important thing for Brynja. As a hacker, it's unforgivable to have control of your local system if you don't control it. So in the first place, Brynja wanted to take over control of the system in Hugh Bryan. But this did alarm Hyperion's artificial intelligence. Hugh Bryan AI. A big war began. The 2 have been battling it out for 2 rounds, but neither has been decided. Now it's the 3rd round. I believe that after the previous familiarity, they have been fully prepared and plan to take down the other party in one fell swoop. Hyperion's defenses are impregnable, and no matter how fierce your attacks are, they will not be able to shake them. Although AI's tone is quite confident, the tight little face and the fast waving hands on the screen show the opposite. Brynja didn't answer AI's words, but attacked more quickly. The tense atmosphere gradually infected everyone, and in the silent control room, only the sound of keyboard clicking. Kiana's eyes were glued to the screen, and Arthur's intentness made Arthur very curious. Kiana, Do you understand? I don't understand. Kiana shook her head happily. Well, what are you doing so intently? Arthur looked at Kiana with some confusion. It's a lot of fun. Well, this answer has made Arthur unable to complain. For Brnya and AI's back and forth attacks, if I see a confusion. I only saw countless codes flashing quickly on the screen, and the two of them moved faster and faster, and their expressions became more and more serious. It seems to have reached a rather critical point. Suddenly, Brenya's movements froze, and her raised right hand stretched out her index finger. At this moment, let's fight it out. Syllable. I slammed it on the keyboard. Suddenly, there was a slight tremor throughout Hyperion, and the lights flickered and flickered. This continued for a few seconds before returning to normal. In front of the screen, Brnya slowly squatted on the ground as if exhausted. Ha ha ha, I told you a long time ago that if you want to hack into the Hyperion system, as long as you have my love sauce, it is absolutely impossible. On the screen, AI-chan laughed at the sky with smoke all over her body. While it's unclear what happened, it seems that Brenya's offense ended in failure once again. After the shock of Hugh Bryan just now, Arthur didn't dare to let them continue to fight. If you make a mess of Hyperion, it's over. Ahem, let's stop here. Arthur walked over to the squatting next to Brnya and patted her little head gently. Get up, don't catch a cold. Arthur said as he bent down and held out his hand. I'm sorry, Captain, it's Brnya who is useless. Brnya lowered her head, looking a little sluggish. How could it be, Brnya, you're so powerful. On the home court of AI-chan, she can play on par with her. Arthur was comforted by appropriateness. Does the captain really think Brnya is very powerful? Brnya looked up as she spoke, her light gray eyes tinged with a hint of anticipation. Of course, Brnya is the best. Humph. As soon as Arthur finished saying this, a dissatisfied snort came from behind him. Well, Kiana is also very powerful. That's pretty much it? Kiana smiled with satisfaction. Hearing Arthur's affirmation, Brnya stood up with the hand stretched out in front of her, and saw that AI in front of her was not to be outdone. Brnya won't give up. No matter how many times you attack, it's in vain. AI leans up on his neck, although his heart is very weak, but he must not lose in momentum. Seeing that the two of them were going toe-to-toe and were about to fight, Arthur hurriedly said. Brnya, don't be so obsessed with whose hands are in the hands of Hugh Bryan, we are all one, in everyone's hands. In fact, the real control is still in Arthur's hands, but he is too lazy to care, and AI is doing a good job. But in case the captain is in danger. Brnya said and glanced at AI, the meaning of which was self-evident. That is to say, with the existence of this love clothes, she can't mobilize Hugh Bryan at the first time. In that case, let the two of you run the Hublians together. This is the only way to solve it at the moment. AI is a Hugh Bryan artificial intelligence, and it would be a little bad if Brnya took over and left her aside. Brnya listened to the captain. Brnya nodded, and AI shrugged on screen. Since you've said so, Captain, AI-chan doesn't matter. A dispute has finally come to an end. In front of the Hugh Bryan drive, the outline of a small island gradually emerged. Captain, there's a small island ahead, should we go up and take a look? Rita walked over and asked. Let's go and have a look. Arthur also misses the long-lost land. Okay, Captain. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Total ship collapse, reject rocks at the start. Author, Return Captain. Chapter 99. Captain, there's something wrong with this island. As Hyperion approached the island, the number of ships around it gradually increased. According to the signs on the ships, it is possible to know their identity. There are pirate ships, There are also some merchant ships, and others have the signs of national symbols. It's a bit surprising that these three ships are mixed together and there is no conflict. It's just that everyone's body is full of anger, and the island in front of them is the gathering place of these anger. Even the nervous Kiana could see it, and one could imagine how far this anger had reached. Everybody be careful. Although Arthur's current lineup is fearless, they still have to maintain the due caution. Got it, Captain. Everyone nodded, and Hyperion drew closer to the edge of the island. The people around them did not react to their arrival, and they seemed to have a strong sense of purpose, and walked towards the island without saying a word. The atmosphere here is really oppressive. Mei Yi's gaze swept around. The weather was gloomy and the island did not have much vegetation, but was made of black stones. In such an environment, people will feel depressed unconsciously. Let's go see what attracts them to the island. Arthur led the way, and everyone followed, their eyes warily watching their surroundings. Everyone gave them the feeling that they were going to fight, and it seemed that the fight had been held for a long time. The feeling around is not people, but walking barrels of explosives, which only need a little spark to completely detonate. And at the same time, in a tavern on the island. The atmosphere here is more dignified, and only the people sitting at the middle table are more leisurely. And everyone around was angry in their eyes, but they just stared, and they didn't make any moves. The meaning of jealousy is self-evident. Hey, Dover, these people seem to be trying to besiege us. Torrible glanced disdainfully at everyone around him, and looked at Doflamingo, who was sitting across from him. It's just a bunch of scum. Doflamingo's hand shook his glass slightly, his uncaring voice echoing around him. This made the faces of everyone around them change, their fists clenched, anger had filled the brains of all of them, and even the smell of wine wafting around them was ignored by them at this moment. One can imagine the extent of anger towards Doflamingo and his party. Dover, as you expected, various forces are about to arrive on this small island one after another. The door to the tavern opened, and Diamante, ignoring the people on both sides, went straight to Doflamingo. I didn't feel a trace of fear for the army to kill. Come on, just get rid of them all at once. A smile tugged at Doflamingo's lips. Let's go out and see how many people want our lives. Doflamingo stood up as he spoke, and walked out of the room with the steps of not recognizing his relatives. After a while, the tavern, which had been overcrowded before, was empty in an instant. As the flow of people entered the island, Arthur's party suddenly stopped. Directly ahead, Doflamingo and the others also stopped, with a surprised look on their faces. Doflamingo, why are you here? Arthur walked up to Doflamingo, his gaze sweeping around. All this is for you. At first, I didn't understand what was going on this island, but the moment I saw Doflamingo, it became clear in an instant. The source of everyone's angry gaze was Doflamingo, who walked in the middle of the road with extremely arrogant steps. Yes, they're just some self-conscious guys. Doflamingo glanced around disdainfully. Make such a big move, come on, tell me what you've been up to lately. The two of them said as they returned to the tavern they had been in before. Only then did everyone really pay attention to Arthur and his party. These people actually knew this demon, and their angry eyes immediately shifted a little. Inside the tavern, despite the increasingly ugly faces of the people around him, Doflamingo recounted their experiences during this time. After Doflamingo was besieged that night, revenge was launched the next day. The people involved in the siege were all nearby countries as well as caravans and pirates within the country. It's just about wanting a piece of the pie. Against the enemy, Doflamingo will not be relentless. Start with the closest and sweep through them one by one. But they didn't kill innocents indiscriminately, they just hung the leader's head on the gate. As for the consequences of doing such a thing, it is not Doflamingo's business. In a few days, almost all the surrounding forces were killed. Doflamingo's approach finally caused outrage. The combined power of several countries is not to be underestimated, and when it was learned that Doflamingo had set foot on this small island, people were sent to him one after another. This has led to the current situation. Yes, I like what you do. Don't cause trouble, but don't be afraid of things either. For those who dare to provoke themselves, they must be thundered. Now that I'm here, it doesn't matter how many of these guys come. After all, Doflamingo is doing things for himself, and if he doesn't see it, it's just that, since he sees it, he should help. No, we can easily solve these people. Doflamingo shook his head. He felt it was necessary to show their strength in front of Arthur. The first meeting was killed by Mei, and if Arthur labeled them as weak, it would probably be a little detrimental to future cooperation. Oh, are you so confident? Okay, then it's up to you to perform. A smile tugged at the corner of Arthur's mouth, and Doflamingo's heart chilled when he saw it. Did you say something wrong? And half an hour ago at the headquarters of the Navy. We really can't let our Navy stop a little. Where did this pirate group come from? And it actually attacked several chambers of commerce and several countries. Looking at the information in his hand, Steel Gukong rubbed his head with a headache. In the past 2 days, I don't know who attacked and killed some important leaders of the Chamber of Commerce and the princes and nobles of the country, and then fled. The only information available now is that they are on a small island. Marshal of the Air. The door opened, and the Red Dog strode in, burly, wearing a Navy uniform on his body, which was even more powerful. Major General Sakaski, now there is a task for you. Cyborg said as he pushed the information in his hand forward. Now a band of pirates of unknown origin are gathering on this island, and I want you to capture them all. This is a group of pirates who have provoked wars in several countries, and their strength must not be underestimated. Rest assured that the Marshal will accomplish his task as a rear admiral. Akainu stood up and saluted a military salute. Well, good, I'll give you a fleet now, let's go as soon as possible. It's the Marshal. After Akainu finished speaking, he turned to leave. And outside, in the harbor, a fleet of 20 warships lined up neatly. Let's go. With a wave of his hand, the warship moved neatly. Head to the island where relations are now becoming more and more strained. On this unknown island, many forces are mixed in, and it has to be said that it is also a kind of fate. Total ship collapse, reject rocks at the start. Author, Return Captain. Chapter 100. In the palace in the center of the island, there are two people who are familiar to Doflamingo and Arthur. Picpathius and Kaido. Picpathius is still the same, dressed in a crisp suit, a businessman's dress. Kaido, on the other hand, was much more bold, with black hair and a shawl, naked and topless, with muscles bulging high all over his body, wearing leather pants, and a huge mace standing next to him. Compared to when he left the Rocks Pirates, the momentum exuded by Kaido's body now is not known how many times stronger. And between the two of them, a small crystal bottle was opened, and the intoxicating aroma of wine emanated. Because this glass of wine brought together two unrelated people. Cheers to our collaboration. Pathius picked up the crystal bottle on the table and poured a glass for each person. It's a shame that there is only one glass of such a fine wine. Kaido pinched the wine glass with 2 fingers, and the wine inside was probably only moistened his throat. As a pirate, in addition to wealth, that is, good wine makes people pursue. And Kaido has always been counted by the barrel when he drinks, but now he can only sip it lightly. After today, there will be more or less such wine. The location of Doflamingo and his party was naturally what he told the kings. It can be said that this encirclement and suppression is his secret push. And Kaido is the partner he found, and he is the backhand to prepare for the prevention of the first one. Everything is still too simple. Thinking that by knowing the origin of this wine from Doflamingo, they would be able to get it inexhaustible. But often reality and imagination are always the opposite. Lord Passeus, the situation on the island has changed. A tuxedo-clad attendant walked in, bowed slightly, and continued. Just now another person has entered the island, and it seems that they are very familiar with those people, and now the two forces have converged. How many of them are there? Passeus raised his eyebrows, a little puzzled in his heart. Could it be that Doflamingo also called for reinforcements? There are 10 people from both sides combined. Hearing the squire's answer, Passeus not only smiled, but also stopped paying attention to the matter. Are people from other countries already here? The time should be gathered. Yes, Lord Passeus, it has been determined by the ships in the harbor that they have almost arrived. Good. Patheus nodded in satisfaction. Then it's time to watch the play. No matter who wins or loses, they will be the winners in the end. Because there is Kaido, a terrifying person with terrifying strength, in charge. As for Kaido's strength, Patheus couldn't be clearer. At the same time, the last ship arrived on the island. This encirclement was formed by the combination of 4 countries, including the support of the Chamber of Commerce in the country. In addition to this, some pirate ships are also mixed in. At this moment, the person in charge has arrived. The door to the tavern opened, and a group of 4 people walked in. Bold, just pirates don't kneel down when they see our nobles. Seeing that Doflamingo and Arthur's 2 tables were completely ignoring him, one of them couldn't help but shout loudly. Today, the island is full of their people, thousands. That's what makes him so arrogant. Are you finally going to do it? I'm a little impatient to wait. Pika, I'll leave these idiots to you. A faint voice echoed through the tavern, and the others hadn't figured out what was going on. Suddenly, with the exception of Doflamingo and the ground around Arthur, stone spikes stabbed forward from the ground. With the entire tavern as the center, it covers a radius. Caught off guard, those who gathered together were directly skewered into sugar gourds. Most of the entire island is made up of rocks, which allows Pika, who has the ability of stone fruits, to maximize his combat power. Suddenly, the screams rang out one after another, and the nobleman who was still shouting before was directly pierced. The distance of tens of meters in a radius fell into silence in an instant, turning into a terrifying hell. This caused the people in the distance to stop at once, and looked at the scene in front of them with horror. It was only 1 step away, and the person who was still talking and laughing with him just now was already fixed on the stone pillar and groaned in pain, and soon there was no sound. Everyone who witnessed this turned pale, swallowed their saliva, and slowly stepped back. The door to the tavern opened, and a group of people stepped out of it, while the stone thorns scattered all around it gradually retracted. Next to Doflamingo, a figure emerged from beneath the ground. For these people, Doflamingo didn't pay attention to it at all. A rabble. Hey, there's a lot of people around. Arthur glanced around, there were at least hundreds of people. It will soon be all cleaned up, and I believe that after this time, those people should be much more honest. Pika, Toripole, Diamanti, let's respond warmly to the guests who have come from afar. He unexpectedly meets Arthur on this small island and promises to give him more things after this incident. Doflamingo could already imagine that countless riches awaited him. As long as he has the money, he can recruit troops and turn the world ruled by the celestial dragons upside down. Captain, do we need help? Seeing the crowd around her, Kiana was a little eager to try. Don't worry, it's just an appetizer, the real enemy hasn't done it yet. Arthur said, looking out over the hill in the distance. In the palace on the hill, Passeus and Kaido looked down. What a bunch of garbage sent out by these countries. It can be seen that the large number of people below besieging Doflamingo did not play an effective role at all. Pika alone stopped most of the power. And where Doflamingo passed, there was a sea of blood. If we continue like this, I am afraid that it will not take a few minutes, and we will always be able to slaughter all these people. Pavius had expected those countries to send a large number of capable people. But now it seems that there are capable people, but they are all weak and pitiful. I guess I naively want to win by numbers. Alas, Kaido, I can only trouble you now. Pavius finally set his sights on Kaido. Don't forget your promise, the price of deceiving me is something you can't afford. Leaving a sentence, Kaido jumped straight down. Pavius on the hill exhaled softly. This man is powerful and dangerous at the same time, but the strength shown by Doflamingo's group. I'm afraid that only this man can defeat it. It's said to be cooperation, but in fact, it's just taking advantage of each other.